Get ready. Straight from the streets of LA.
Lower Alabama, that is.
We're talking SEC football, and that's all. This is AP and Kelly as we see it.
I'm all about that action. I'm all about that action. I'm all about that action. I said I'm all about that action.
I'm AP Stedham from LA, Lower Alabama.
And I'm Kelly Finley, journalist of more than 24 years, talking about all things news and notes and sports, behind the scenes, and all the fun you need to know about before you watch your big game.
This is AP and Kelly as we see it, a syndicated weekly 1-hour show discussing the Southeastern Conference and always keeping an eye on the national college football scene and other sports. Hey, Kelly.
Hey, co-host, how are you?
I'm good, Kelly. How's everything with you?
Very good. I see my husband is even complimenting you on your background. I love it.
It took a moment, but hey, we're practicing. We're trying to get some
evolving.
improvement.
Yeah, we're evolving. Yes, love that. And you know what? Our friends know that if they follow along, especially on social media, you can see all the good and how far we've come. We're from the podcasting to, of course, the show that you're watching here. You can catch us on YouTube. You can catch us on Instagram, Facebook, and X, formerly known as Twitter. And feel free to post a question. We'd love for you to follow us. Okay, so on Instagram, on X, formerly known as Twitter, and also on Facebook. That is how we stay connected to you. Thanks to technology, you roll with us, so we roll with you every single week, AP. And I love how we can go back and listen to, previous shows or watch previous shows at this point, because you've taken us to the 21st century, my friend. Podcasting and videos. Here we go.
We love it, Kelly. We love it. So, we can be on the road because we have these great sponsors, Kelly. And before we mention them, we want to say, check out our show on YouTube, AP and Kelly as we see it. As you mentioned, all our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, the X account, and whatever galaxy you're in, you find us somehow.
Yeah, we are not hard to find.
No. So, but anyway, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Greer's Market. They're a fabulous sponsor for us. They're in 3 states. Over 100 years in business, Alabama, Florida, Mississippi, 29 locations. They have Lucy's recipes. You can check those out and get ready for all the ball games and the special occasions and the holidays. And we know to look in the weekly ads, Kelly, the football, family, and friends. This is the season for all those things. And when you're trying to get ready and maybe you're busy, you ran out of time. So you're going to click on the groceries to go on the Greer's Market website, because they'll deliver all the delicious food, the snacks, the beverages right to your house, your office, your location. And we know that every time you go in there, Kelly, I find something different because Greer's got it. They guarantee it.
Absolutely. You got to feed the beast before you get into your favorite activity, whether it's work or play or a little bit of both, because we love talking about football.
And then, Kelly, I think this is one of your favorite commercials. The next one we have is Wind Creek. Kelly 25 for all the first-time players at the Wind Creek locations in Alabama, Atmore, Montgomery, Wetumpka. You mentioned Kelly 25. That's Kelly with a Y. And your first-time player, you got that $25 bonus. And then, Kelly, if you're a first-time player, you have potentially a $1,000 rebate on the first time that you play. So that's always interesting as well.
I think I'm going to go to Wind Creek Atmore for my birthday this year, which is in November. I'm going to play this, and I'm going to let you know the results. Kelly with a Y.
If I see you come back with the sunglasses and a new hairdo and a new dress and a new outfit, I'm saying, Kelly, you won. You won.
Right. Well, you're already used to the new hairdos. You're like, you get how that goes. But I know what you mean. I mean, it sounds pretty winning to me. So I hope everybody has fun with that. Kelly 25 for that $25 bonus. Indeed, when you head to Wind Creek.
Oh yeah, and then one more sponsor, Kelly. We have to thank Robertsdale Dental Care. That's with Dr. Jason Northcutt. Not only does Dr. Jason Northcutt offer basic full-service dental treatment, but Dr. Jason Northcutt has developed a niche within the practice where he provides comprehensive dental implant services such as single implants, bone grafting, and full mouth reconstruction. Dr. Jason Northcutt has been highly trained in those disciplines to offer comfortable, and long-lasting solutions to major dental problems. So come by and see Dr. Jason Northcutt at Robertsdale Dental Care, 251-947-3636.
I love how you mention it, and there it is on the ticker right there, so people can jot that number down, give Dr. Jason a call. Having a healthy smile it means a lot, especially when you're watching your favorite sport like football. I do want to say one before we get into the games. I do want to see my ribbon. We're in October, and so this
Oh,
is
yes.
this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So be mindful. If you see a lot of pink, that's what people are acknowledging, celebrating, reflecting on. I know, from a college standpoint and from a pro standpoint, we'll see various ways in which the teams are, bringing awareness to this month. So just keep that in mind for your favorite lady or gentleman, because those numbers are not where they need to be, but through awareness and resources, we can help change that for sure.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for bringing that up to our audience. We really appreciate it.
You got it, my friend. That's what we do around here. We drop the plays and everybody wins. So last week, where were you and which game were you watching?
Kelly, I think I hit the jackpot with a really good ball game. It was an upset of a top 5 team. Ole Miss was playing at home, first conference game, and the Kentucky Wildcats. This was quite an upset for them. The first time they had such an upset since 1977. They went to Penn State and beat Penn State, and Happy Valley made it Unhappy Valley. They beat Ole Miss down there 20-17. Kelly, Kentucky ran the football effectively. Brock Vandagriff, he threw over that middle with consistency and accuracy to his favorite receiver, Dane Key. Others contributed as well. Berrien Brown made the nice catch down the sideline on a 4th down play to lead to the winning touchdown. They have 4 people up front, Kelly, that can get to the passer without the blitz, the Wildcats. They held Georgia to 13, Ole Miss to 17. In today's era of football, 30 points, 2 games. I don't know if anybody could duplicate that, Kelly. I don't know how much money you're paying, but Mark Stoops and his staff, they did a terrific job stopping the high-powered Ole Miss offense.
At first blush, when you're seeing them in action, what do you think that they've done differently to have these types of results for this season?
I think what they did there was that controlled the line of scrimmage with that defensive line. They put pressure on the quarterback. They also tackled hard, and they moved the ball consistently on the ground. They held Ole Miss to 1 for 10 on 3rd down conversions. You know how difficult that is, Kelly, to hold down an offense?
Those numbers do not go together.
No. So Lane Kiffin, he was very disappointed in his team, rightfully so, but Mark Stoops had a tremendous victory. And I was happy for Brock Vandagriff. I know Brock and his family, and he needed that game, and he was a pinpoint passer all day. His receivers supported him. The offensive line held him out enough. He got sacked a few times, held the ball a little bit long, but overall he played probably his best game, because he was a backup at Georgia for a couple of years, but he had a chance to shine, and he took advantage of the spotlight, and the Kentucky fans were there in force, and it was a great day for football. The early game, and worked out really well for the Wildcats. And now Ole Miss, maybe they're thinking, I don't know, Lane Kiffin, if he could win these types of games, he's, in my book, he still has to win these types of games against these better opponents. And
I think Kentucky knew AP was in the house, and they knew they needed to show up and show out. I think that's what happened. They're going to ask you to come to the next game again.
Maybe so. But anyhow.
All right, so that's our recap. Let's get into the games this week, because I know all of our listeners and viewers are really wanting to crunch some numbers, know who to watch, know what to look for. Let's kick things off with Alabama taking on Vanderbilt. Number one Alabama, should I say?
Number one Alabama, we should say, right? Yeah, number one. They defeated the Georgia Bulldogs. They took that big lead, 30-7 at halftime, hung on for the victory, 41-34. Alabama's playing Vanderbilt. They had over 500 yards of offense. But Kelly, still 10 penalties for Alabama. Still 10 penalties. And Kelly, we mentioned that Ryan Williams was going to be a significant player for them in the preseason. Yeah. We said that. But it kind of reminds me when Jameson Williams transferred from Ohio State, the wide receiver to Alabama, had about 1,500 yards that season. He was the difference maker for Alabama that year. If they didn't have him, they wouldn't have made it to the SEC championship game and then the championship game as well. So this Ryan Williams, we thought he'd be very good. He's exceptional right now, and
But you know what,
he's playing
though?
that role. Yeah,
But it was interesting. He had a freshman moment when he was back there for the punt return. He and his teammate, and nobody knew who was going to catch it. And there was a moment where people were like, "Oh yeah, he is 17. Okay, he
yes,
is in the SEC." And it
yes,
was very interesting. But he redeemed himself times 10 with his ballet pirouette, catch, snag, winning touchdown. And it's interesting for those who are new to his story, the fact that he decommitted once Coach Saban announced that he was retiring. So Coach Kalen, said the right things, got him back on board, and here we are with a #1 Alabama.
right. And when playing Vanderbilt, Alabama's a huge favorite in that game. But we're gonna come back and
Okay.
continue on that game as well because we're running out of time because we're having so much fun. That's
Yeah,
why.
we've got a guest coming up after the segment.
Blake Topmeyer from the USA Today, the senior national college football writer. So we'll be back with AP and Kelly as we see it after these messages.
Let the games begin at Wind Creek Casino, where new players get a free play rebate of up to $1,000 based on their first day's play. Just stop by Player Services at any Alabama location and sign up for a rewards account to get all the details. Mention you heard this ad on the radio and give the code Kelly25 and we'll throw in a $25 free play bonus. That's KELLY 25. Don't miss out on our new player promise, exclusively from Wind Creek. Minimum $75 loss required for free play rebate. Get full details at windcreek.com or see Player Services.
Hi, I'm AP Stedham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greer's.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it.
And we're back with AP and Kelly as we see it. And Kelly, we have a friend of the show as a guest, Blake Topmeyer, USA Today Network, senior national college football columnist. Hey, Blake, welcome to AP and Kelly as we see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Good talking to you guys.
Hi, Blake. Yeah, it's great to have you on because we love to talk about some football around here.
That's perfect. That's what I do.
Hey, Blake, I think there's two conferences trying to take over the world, the Big Ten and the SEC. Is that the case?
Yeah, I've heard the same, right? Yeah, next week in Nashville, leaders from both conferences will convene, and a number of things on that agenda for the meeting in Nashville between the leadership of those two conferences. Among the agenda items is discussion about the future of the college football playoff. Now, what do we know about the playoff? So this format that we have in place, the 12-team playoff with 5 automatic qualifiers and 7 at-large bids, that is on the books for this season and next season. Now, what comes next in 2026 is still unresolved. What we know is that the playoff starting in 2026 will have no fewer than 12 teams. Could have more, or it could stay at 12. How the bids are decided has not been determined. As I said, as we know now, it's 5 automatic qualifiers, 7 at large. That's on the books for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And then that goes under review. And who's going to be driving the bus for the future playoff format? Mm-hmm. You guessed it, the SEC and the Big Ten.
Hey, Blake, the word on the street is they're trying to get rid of the committee, the 13-person committee to pick the teams because they're trying to enforce a certain amount of bids for the conferences. Is that what you've heard?
I've not independently heard that. I know ESPN is reporting that, but I don't have any sourcing to confirm that on my own. But yeah, that's what ESPN is reporting. Who would select the teams at that point? Who knows? Of course, if they're all divvied up as AQs, you don't need a committee, right? And that's one thing that could be on the table as well, is you almost, if not completely, eliminate at-large bids and you divvy up the AQs. I mean, I think, we're still in the trial balloon phase. It feels like, you see some anonymously sourced reporting float out there. Whether this is something that one conference wants and not necessarily the other conference wants, we don't know. I think the Big Ten is a little bit stronger in pushing the idea of ramping up the AQs. Whether they could get the SEC on board with that, we shall see. As we know, you used to be the leaders of these conferences would butt heads. Now, Tony Petitti from the Big Ten and Greg Sankey from the SEC, they're pretty chummy. And some people have said, well, that's good, right? For me, I think that could be good for the Big Ten and the SEC and could be very dangerous for everybody else, because you get the two big power brokers on the same page, chummy, they're going to come up with an idea that works best for the two of them and doesn't work good for anybody else.
And I have to say that, growing up Big Ten country, I'm from Michigan. That's one side of the beast. And then now living here in Alabama, seeing the SEC, that's a whole different side of the beast. And you've nailed it. I mean, when those two combine their efforts, good for them. But what does that mean for the teams and the fans and the families? But at the end of the day, it's a business, right? My question for you, Blake, is we don't know the amount of teams when you talk about the playoffs as we move forward. Who benefits the most if there are more teams as compared to less teams?
I think it sort of depends on the decision on how those bids are divvied up. Let's say they go from 12 to 14 teams, but the automatic qualifier list stays at 5. And so then you would have 5 AQs divvied up to 5 different conferences, and then 9 at-large bids instead of 7 like we have in this 12-team format. So who would stand to benefit there? I think it could be the SEC and the Big Ten. You could, in that format, see maybe the 5th best, the 6th best team from the SEC get considered. But I think you could also make a case that the Big 12 or the ACC could stand to benefit as well. Maybe the 3rd best team from those conferences could snag that final at-large bid. I think the 5+9 format, if we're following here with AQs and at-large bids, I think the 5+9 format has the potential to be a little bit more variable year to year in who it benefits. If they go a different direction and divvy up the bids as far as more AQs, they reduce the number of at-large bids and they divvy up the AQs, they're not going to divvy those up equally because the SEC and the Big Ten have the most power, the most clout, the most strong arm at the decision-making table. If they go that direction, they're going to tilt the scales to where they get the most seats at the playoff. However, I think in some years that could actually backfire on the SEC and the Big Ten. If you go with 4 AQs apiece, let's say the playoff goes to 14 teams and the Big Ten and the SEC say they want 4 AQs automatically and the rest of the bids are spread out otherwise. I think you could get into a scenario where you're actually costing yourself a bid in that format in a year where you might have 5 or 6 worthy qualifiers. If you've decided on the front end, you get 4 teams, well, then you get 4 teams. So I think it could actually, in the long run, bite those conferences. But it's sort of the argument of like, do you want assurances of the number of bids you're going to get, or are you willing to leave it to chance, willing to leave it to a committee vote? Now, historically, the playoff has always worked quite nicely for the SEC in the Big Ten. Those are the only 2 conferences in the 4-team playoff that ever got multiple bids into the playoff. And I think in the current system, year over year, they're going to consistently get the most bids. So I actually don't think there's a huge risk for the SEC and the the Big Ten of leaving it up to a vote, leaving it up to chance, leaving it up to more at-large bids. But if they want to reduce the risk and settle on a number, that's the other avenue. But I do think there would be some years in which that kind of backfires on those 2 conferences.
Sounds like we need to take some calculus around here because all these numbers.
A lot of numbers involved. But plus, with the new teams, Texas and Oklahoma, Blake, 2 blue bloods, they have a better chance of getting more than 4. Do you think, Blake, that they're keeping an eye or speaking to the people in Washington? Because we know that when they have those college football bowls and different things were happening, the Senate and the Congress was involved and they had some hearings. Do you think they're consulting with people in Washington to make sure that there's a sense of fairness, even though they're very powerful, the Big Ten and the SEC.
In regards to the playoff, no, I don't.
Right.
I don't think they're running this past Ted Cruz or Cory Booker or anyone like that. I think they will make their decision, and if someone wants to challenge it in court, I think it'll be a see you in court situation. But no, I think they continue to work Congress as they feel is appropriate for NIL, and that has really stalled with the election coming in November. Nothing's going to happen between now and November as it pertains to any NIL legislation. Just decisions of that magnitude just don't happen in an election year. So we will see. If one party controls the presidency, the House, and the Senate, that increases the chance that there would be some sort of federal legislation in terms of the NIL space. If it's a split power structure, as we have in Washington right now, I think it's plausible we could continue to march forward with no federal NIL legislation. But as it pertains to the playoff, no, I think it would probably be unlikely that they would run any ideas past Washington.
Blake, a man of many talents, talking sports and legislation and elections. Make sure you're registered to vote. I mean,
That's right.
I love that. Well, everything that you're discussing, ultimately, what does this do to the fan experience? As it seems like they're working their way through the layers of all of this newness. Ultimately, what can the fans expect?
About a minute and a half, Blake.
Yeah, I think fans in other conferences are not going to like it if the Big Ten and the SEC settle on a format that predetermines those conferences get a set number of bids. I think there are fans in the Big 12, ACC, and beyond that are willing to admit in a moment of sobriety that those are the two best conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten. And so if the season plays out and those two conferences earn the most bids, I think fans say, well, fair is fair. There will be grumbling. There will be controversy. There always is. But I think fans are fine with the general sense of it. If the SEC and Big Ten go with a format that guarantees a minimum number of bids before that is ever kicked off, I think fans far and wide are going to say this is a rigged system, because that's the way it would present. Before the season ever starts, if you're guaranteeing a minimum number of bids to a certain league, fans elsewhere are not going to like it. Frankly, I think fans even in those own conferences aren't going to like it. I think fans in the SEC, in the Big Ten, they believe they have the best league anyway. They don't have to have the deck rigged in their favor. They think they can go out and earn the bids and get as many as possible and win national championships. And history says they're right.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Blake, we're just getting started with discussing the SEC with AP and Kelly as we see it. And we're going to delve into, I'm going to ask Blake to see if he can pick his top four at this moment in the SEC when we come back. So we'll be back after these messages with AP and Kelly as we see it.
Hi, I'm AP Stedham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greer's.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it.
Let the games begin at Wind Creek Casino, where new players get a free play rebate of up to $1,000 based on their first day's play. Just stop by Player Services at any Alabama location and sign up for a rewards account to get all the details. Mention you heard this ad on the radio and give the code Kelly25 and we'll throw in a $25 free play bonus. That's KELLY 25. Don't miss out on our new player promise, exclusively from Wind Creek. Minimum $75 loss required for free play rebate. Get full details at windcreek.com or see Player Services.
And welcome back with AP and Kelly as we see it. And we're going to continue our discussion with our fabulous guest, Blake Toppmeyer, USA Today Network, senior national college football columnist. Blake, I'm going to ask you, last week was a tremendous game in most people's eyes. Georgia traveling to Tuscaloosa, the two top-ranked teams among them, and they had 1,000 yards of offense. Now, is that a classic football game, 1,000 yards worth of offense in today's world?
I don't know if it's a classic football game. It was definitely an entertaining game, certainly in the fourth quarter as Georgia mounted the rally. I mean, throughout the first half, it was really almost unlike anything we've seen while Kirby Smart has been the coach of Georgia. Of course, he's lost games, and we're accustomed now to him losing to Alabama. He's 1-6 all time to Alabama, so that wasn't a rarity. But the way they were getting crushed in the first half, the way that defense was getting picked apart in the first half, we haven't seen that really from a Georgia team since the 2019 SEC championship game where Georgia played LSU. That was competitive for the first half. After halftime, Joe Burrow and the Tigers poured it on and took apart Kirby's defense. We haven't really seen that to that extent until we saw it again on the first half Saturday night.
It was so lopsided. It was like, where's Georgia? Did they bring their dog with them?
I mean, at halftime, I start writing my column. I got it all set up for an Alabama beatdown, and that column never saw the light of day. You start to rewrite. So yeah, I don't. It wasn't a classic game. When I think classic SEC football, I think that back to like the 9-6 game between Alabama and LSU years ago. But I think this is kind of the new SEC. The question that I have coming out of that game is, did we even see the best team in the SEC on the field that night in Tuscaloosa? I didn't see Texas in the building.
That's a good segue. Good segue, Blake. I was going to ask you about who do you have right now, would you say, let's say the top 4 teams in the SEC? Maybe Kelly, you'll disagree.
Oh, love that.
Be careful now.
Top 4 in order. I've got Texas number 1, Alabama number 2, Georgia number 3, Tennessee number 4. Now, a couple of these teams are going to play, right? Georgia plays at Texas in a few weeks. Georgia plays against Tennessee in November. Alabama doesn't play Texas, but they do play Tennessee. So we'll see a lot of head-to-heads between these teams. The teams that don't play are Texas and Alabama, the teams that I think are the 2 best teams in the conference. And maybe we'll get some clarity on who is the true number 1 team if those teams do indeed meet in Atlanta for the SEC championship.
Well, that Alabama-Georgia game, I mean, it really shifted so much because coming into the game, both teams ranked completely differently than as they're ranked now. Money-wise, Ryan Williams, I mean, his NIL stock just went through the roof after the amazing plays that he exhibited, including that winning touchdown. So it's very interesting to see. But we know that every game can change the conversation. What did you learn most, Blake, as you from the games that you watched, the games that you covered? What did you learn most about those games this prior weekend?
Yeah, so a couple things. I'll bring in Ole Miss to the conversation because I think Ole Miss had it set up really nicely to make the playoff with the talent that they brought in out of the transfer portal with a pretty accommodating schedule, at least by SEC standards. I thought it was set up real nicely for Lane Kiffin. And then in their SEC opener, they get pushed around at home. They get beat by Kentucky. Now, Kentucky's not a terrible team. They'll probably finish somewhere around the 6-6, 7-5 mark. But that loss is going to cling to Ole Miss like an anchor. And I think they're going to struggle at this point. They still have a game against Georgia on the schedule. They have a game against LSU on the road on the schedule. They play Oklahoma. I mean, if Ole Miss loses one more, certainly if they lose 2 more, but even if they're at 10-2 at the end of the season with a loss to Kentucky weighing them down, I think Ole Miss is facing some peril now when it comes to their college football playoff prospects. So that's one observation. 2, this deal with Georgia, like I was willing to chalk up the Kentucky game as to Georgia never plays well at Lexington. They always kind of play possum, and then they come out the next week and they look dominant. Well, that didn't happen this time. And now in 7 of the last 8 quarters, Georgia's offense has not looked good at all. And in a couple of those quarters, their defense didn't look very good. But their offense in particular, 7 of the last 8 quarters, until the 4th quarter on Saturday in Tuscaloosa, that offense has been spinning its tires. So I don't think it's panic mode yet for Georgia, but I do think it's concern mode at this point. The offensive line is not playing particularly well. Carson Beck, who I think is a really talented quarterback with the NFL in his future, he's regressed in his last 2 starts, and his receivers aren't giving him a ton of help either. So I do think it's a moment of concern for Georgia right now, particularly with what's left on their schedule.
Blake, Georgia, they like to run the football. Before that game, I think they were 84th or 85th in the country. So that's the most surprising to me, because unless you have a number one draft choice at the wide receiver position, you know that you can't flourish. But he threw for over 300 yards or whatever he did by the end of the game. Maybe he was in close to 400. But running the football, Kirby Smart likes to run the football, play defense, and you're not seeing that from these Bulldogs. That's the most surprising to me.
Well, Kirby Smart made a mistake when he hired Mike Bobo as his offensive coordinator. He should not have gone down that road. What's the old saying with Mike Bobo? I will paraphrase here. It's run the dang ball, Bobo. That is Mike Bobo's history. Georgia fans know it well. Run the dang ball. Kirby should have known what he was getting into here. I mean, Mike Bobo's had a long career. He's had some nice seasons as an offensive coordinator, but Georgia went back-to-back as national champions with Stetson Bennett as its quarterback and with Todd Monken as its offensive coordinator. Monken goes to the NFL. Kirby turns to his old buddy, Mike Bobo. I think right now there's a lot of Georgia fans probably sitting there thinking, wish you wouldn't have done that, Kirby.
And I've heard that said another way, like, you're talking a lot of Bobo. I mean, and that's not a good thing. So that aligns with what you're saying. I wonder what the halftime chat sounded like, because Georgia came out of that locker room like they had some V8 and so some go get 'em, because they thought that they had that game in the bag.
Yeah, I think Kirby is among the best, if not the best, motivators in the sport right now. Certainly with Nick Saban retired, Kirby's always been an excellent motivator, and that's why I'm surprised that Georgia didn't come out of the gates better. But when they went into halftime, they had two different roads they could go down. Right, you roll over, you let Alabama win and polish it off for a 4-touchdown victory, or you get off the mat and fight. And we've seen this from Georgia in some past instances. If you go back to the first national championship game that Georgia won and beating Alabama in Indianapolis, Alabama punched them in the mouth pretty good in that game. Georgia rallied. You go back to the semifinal game that year, the Peach Bowl. Ohio State dominated that game for 3 quarters. They were up 14 going into the fourth quarter. Now, there were some factors at play in both of those rallies. In the championship game, Jameson Williams from Alabama got hurt in the first half. That changed Alabama's offense after halftime. And in the rally against Ohio State, Marvin Harrison got hurt. The star receiver from Ohio State suffered a concussion late in the third quarter. Ohio State's offense wasn't the same in the fourth quarter. But nonetheless, injuries aside, Kirby and his program have showed before, even when they're facing big deficits, they can rally. And so I do think that reiterated that Kirby remains a premier motivator in this sport. And when his team goes in the locker room down big at halftime, that address is, why were you down big that much at halftime?
Yeah. He got lots to say.
That's right.
Hey, Blake, we got about a minute left. Give me a surprise, projecting a surprise moment, a surprise team in the SEC.
Surprise team in the SEC. I'm surprised that Texas A&M looked as poorly as they did in at least on offense in that opening game against Notre Dame. I'm a little surprised that Florida has been, I guess, this bad. I didn't think Florida would be great, but I did think that Billy Napier had more talent than he'd had in his 2 previous seasons. I did think the roster was in a little bit better shape than it's been the 2 previous seasons. That's wrong. It's not in better shape. And so, he's a fired coach walking right now. South Carolina's a little bit better than I expected. That defensive front is pretty mean, and Ole Miss is at South Carolina this weekend. Ole Miss better be on upset alert. So that's a bright spot for the conference. And then one more, I thought LSU, I thought their defense would be better. Didn't think it would be great, but I thought it would be a step forward. It's a slight step forward from last year because of how big of a disaster it was last year, but it's not that much better. And I thought it would be substantially improved.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, Blake, we want to thank you so much. Our guest, Blake Toppmeyer, USA Today Network, the senior national college football columnist. We really appreciate it, Blake, and we'll touch base down the road. Thank you so much. We'll be back after these messages with AP and Kelly as we see it.
Hi, I'm AP Stedham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greer's.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it. I'm AP Stedham with Dr. Jason Northcutt of Robertsdale Dental Care.
AP, not only do we offer basic full-service dental treatment, but I also have developed a niche within the practice where I provide comprehensive dental implant services, such as single implants, bone grafting, and full mouth reconstruction. I've been highly trained in those disciplines to offer comfortable and long-lasting solutions to major dental problems.
Come by and see Dr. Jason Northcutt at Robertsdale Dental Care.
And we're back with AP and Kelly as we see it. And Kelly, Blake Topmeyer, he's a sensational guest. He's very knowledgeable, has an awesome perspective. And so we're always glad to have him on the show from the USA Today Network.
Yeah, and be sure to follow him on X. He's heavily regarded there and puts a lot of content there. So he's at B Topmeyer, top with 2 P's.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're getting back to Alabama Vanderbilt because you want to add a couple of nuggets of information.
Yeah, here's something interesting about Vanderbilt. Their total offense is 96th in the country, passing offense 101, but their scoring offense is 25th in the country, Kelly. Isn't that something? Those numbers don't add up, really?
Not at all.
But they are.
Mean, we're not mathematicians, but we know that doesn't make sense.
No, but anyhow, but Vanderbilt, they always give Alabama historically, they kind of give them a tough game up there, usually. Pavia is the quarterback for Vanderbilt that transfers from Mexico State. Clark Lee, the coach, he's a defensive oriented type person. So we'll see what happens. But Alabama's a big favorite, of course.
Yeah, and now they're newly ranked #1, so they've got a little extra swagger to their SEC step. All right, next on the list, Tennessee taking on Arkansas. What do we need to know about this game?
Tennessee, Arkansas. Tennessee's a 13.5 point favorite. That series is 13-6 in favor of Tennessee. I still like that Arkansas team. They lost to Texas A&M 21-17. They've got that trio we always discussed: Green, Jackson, and Armstrong, the quarterback, running back, the wide receiver. But Arkansas, they haven't been home for a while, so they're excited to be back there. Arkansas, for Josh Heupel, he said they're good against the run. They have that good running back. And their quarterback is a difference maker. Taylor Green, the transfer from Boise State. A few numbers on Tennessee. Total offense, 3. Their scoring offense, #1 in the country. Rush defense, #2. Pass defense, #4. Total defense, #1, Kelly. So they're holding up their finger, #1 on both sides for offense and defense, right?
Right.
Arkansas is not too bad. Total offense, 13. Rush defense, 21. Pass defense, 33rd, and total defense 47, but they're going to need an excellent effort to slow down that offense of Tennessee's that's #1 in the country.
You wonder if exhaustion, though, can kick in, too, because if you're #1 on defense, you're #1 on offense, doing that game after game, I mean, something sometimes has to give. It makes me think of the young man for Colorado, Travis Hunter, how he plays both sides of the ball. You wonder, like, how are you exerting that much energy? How are you keeping this up? But we shall see. And you mentioned Josh Heupel. He was the name of the game last week, right? We said his name many a times.
Well, when they played Oklahoma, he was the quarterback for Oklahoma National Championship, went back a couple weeks ago to defeat Oklahoma. So that was a big game for him. It was emotional for him. Hey, Kelly, one thing about Sam Pittman mentioned today in the press conference, they need to win on first down, Arkansas, to be in that game. Need to win on first down. They don't want to be the second and third and long.
Is that more mental? Is that more?
Well, it's mental that you're playing a top team and you can't afford any mistakes. You have to really execute the best you can because you're playing an excellent team. They're going to take advantage of all your errors and things. So
make sure that mental matches that physical.
Yes.
Auburn taking on Georgia. Both of these teams, it seems like everybody's talking about restructuring and reassessing. And what do they need to know?
Yeah, another strange thing. Auburn, okay, they're 131st in turnovers, which is not good. Minus 2.20. We know this. Played Oklahoma, an excellent ball game. Threw the ball over 300 yards. Kelly. Over 300 yards, and they lost the game at home, 27-21. Why? Why did they lose, Kelly? The pick
Penalties.
six. Pick six.
Oh,
The pick six. That was the difference.
that'll do
27-21. Like I said, we said last week, Auburn is moving the football. But 4 and 5 turnovers last week wasn't as bad, but it was critical. That one pick six. It
Gotcha.
gave up those winning points. Jacquez Hunter, the running back, almost had 100 yards. Quarterback throws for over 300, and you lose. That shouldn't happen at home.
Well, and when that pick six happens, that changes the momentum for every single person. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just from the fans to the coaches to the players.
Yeah, so they're going to be playing against Georgia, over 500 yards of offense versus Alabama. This is the oldest rivalry in the South, Auburn versus Georgia. The series stands 56 for Auburn, 64 for Georgia, 8 ties. Georgia is a 23.5-point favorite, but Auburn played them tough last year. We'll see what happens on the road, and Auburn is wounded. Auburn is wounded. You're dangerous when you're wounded.
But you know what? You wonder if Georgia is still going to be hangry coming off, that
Could
loss to Alabama. So you got two hungry and hangry teams
Right.
playing each other. Everybody wants to eat, but it's going to be who's going to be well
No.
fed.
And Georgia now, Kelly, believe it or not, 102nd in rush offense. I never thought I'd see a Kirby Smart team in the hundreds rushing offense. So that's a little strange for me.
That's the beauty of this game, right? I mean, it gives you that heartburn, that Malox moment when you watch these teams. Up next on our screen, we are covering Central Florida taking on Florida. So we're staying in the Sunshine State on this one.
Yeah, Kelly, who would have ever thought a school in Orlando would be a 1-point underdog to the school in Gainesville? When you're thinking about University of Florida football all these years, the
Yeah.
players that all-stars and all SEC, All-American in the
Right.
pros. Here you are, University of Florida. They're 2-2 and 1-1 in the conference. They're a 1-point favorite over Central Florida. Gus Malzahn, we know he's familiar with the SEC, having coached at Auburn. So Central Florida, they lost last week, 48-21 to Colorado. That was a big upset. Not only did they lose, they lost convincingly by 27 points. So that was not good. So right now, University of Central Florida, they could beat Florida, which those Florida fans, that would be a disaster, Kelly, if you lose to Central Florida. But they've already lost to Miami. So you could be maybe, you're facing, you might be the 4th or 5th team in the state in your University of Florida, because you're looking at South Florida and they play Florida State, their annual rivalry at the end of the year. So you can lose 3 times to 3 schools in the state of Florida in one season. That would not be good for Billy Napier.
No, that's a lot of hurt feelings. Let me ask you this, because you always know these dates and deadlines. When it comes, do you foresee people trying to transfer because they're just not happy with being on a team that has been known to be a winning name in this rivalry?
I think so. You're probably going to see some people transfer from Florida. You might not see the same coach next year. That's already the word on the street. Yeah.
Word on the street. And we know you have your ear to the street, my friend. We have already talked about Ole Miss in South Carolina. Well, we talked about Ole Miss, I should say, but Ole Miss in South Carolina, they're playing each other. Who looks to be the stronger team for this week?
Yeah, Ole Miss coming off of that loss at home, going on the road to Columbia, they're a 9.5-point favorite. But South Carolina, we saw them play LSU tough at home, and South Carolina, they're improving, getting better. So I wouldn't sleep on the Gamecocks, because Shane Beamer, he's trying to rebuild that program. But Ole Miss, let's see what happens. Can they rebound? Do they have enough grit and determination to say, all right, we have one loss, we're still in the hunt for the playoff, for the 12-team playoff berth?
Something that we talked about with our guest today. But I just think that these players understand that we've talked about this before. A loss is a loss, but the cool thing is you got a whole new week to get it right, to go back to the drawing board, look at what your upcoming team did the week before, figure out how you can tighten up yourself. And then once it's kickoff, it's game on. I mean, it's a mental game. And so hopefully they're doing what they need to do to be prepared.
Oh, they are.
All right, up next, Mizzou. Mizzou and Texas A&M. We always smile when we talk about Mizzou.
Yeah, Luther Burden III is our main man. So number 9, Mizzou. a number of times.
Yeah.
Until we,
I say it like that because when Luther Vandross, because remember he went through the
Right.
weight loss time,
Yes,
and
he did
was
the phase,
when he
yes.
was on the thinner side, he was Luther, but when but when he was on the heavier side, that was Luther. And
Luther, right. Yes. That's the distinction.
That's the distinction. So, what do we need to know about Luther and his teammates?
Luther, they were not good on third down. Eli Drinkowitz, he spoke, 3 for 10 third down. They had 22 missed tackles and 4 busts in the last couple games. So they're a 1.5 point, believe it, number 9 ranked, but they're a 1.5 point underdog at Texas A&M. So Texas A&M coming off that great victory in Arlington, Texas against Arkansas, 21-17. So we know the Texas A&M line has a good defensive line. The defensive backs are improving. Here's a fact for you: that Bria Reed is the assistant director of recruiting. Her brother is the quarterback for Texas A&M. Marcel Reed.
It's a family game. Hey,
family affair.
30 seconds left, co-host.
Yep, we've got the byes. Texas, number 2. LSU, number 13. Oklahoma, number 19. Kentucky and Mississippi State. So, but there's some good games this weekend in the SEC. I'll be traveling up to Columbus, Ohio to check out the Buckeyes and their freshman receiver from South Florida. We know Ryan Williams down south is very good. We're going to check out that wide receiver up there in Columbus, Ohio as well. He's a big receiver, 6'3", so different from Ryan Williams. But we're going to be back next week with AP and Kelly as we sit, and we thank our audience for tuning in. And remember, check us on YouTube, our YouTube channel, AP and Kelly as we sit.
Let the games begin at Wind Creek Casino, where new players get a free play rebate of up to $1,000 based on their first day's play. Just stop by Player Services at any Alabama location and sign up for a rewards account to get all the details. Mention you heard this ad on the radio and give the code Kelly25, and we'll throw in a $25 free play bonus. That's KELLY 25. Don't miss out on our new player promise, exclusively from Wind Creek. Minimum $75 loss required for free play rebate. Get full details at windcreek.com or see Player Services.
Hi, I'm AP Stedham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greer's.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it.